The automatic doors part with that soft mechanical sigh, and it hits you before you're inside, part popcorn, part fresh tires, cold air fighting summer outside. Your mom is already scanning left, your dad is already drifting right. You're standing in the middle, not knowing how much you'll miss standing there. The specific Kmart smell the second the doors opened. That smell had no name and no real ingredients, just warm popcorn from the snack counter, new rubber from the tire center, and air conditioning working overtime against the parking lot heat. Your whole family walked through it together for 1 second before everyone scattered toward their own aisle. Nobody mentioned the smell out loud. It was just the sound of a trip starting, the quiet signal that everyone was about to wander off and still somehow end up under the same roof. Nobody built a store that smelled like that again, and nobody warned you it would matter. The Kmart in-store radio. Some announcer's voice floated over the speakers between songs you half knew, flat and calm, reading off a price check or a department page like it was nothing. Your dad hummed along without noticing he was doing it. Your mom used it as a clock, timing how long she had before he wandered back from hardware. It was the background noise of every family trip, so constant you never thought to actually listen for it. Then one year the voice just wasn't there anymore, and neither was any store that filled a silence quite that way.
Mom's World, the fabric and craft section. Your mother touched every bolt of fabric on that long table before choosing one, running the corner between 2 fingers like she could feel what it would become. You stood there tugging her sleeve, too young to understand this was the only 15 minutes of the week that belonged only to her. Nobody rushed her through it, not even your father, who waited by the carts without complaint. Bolts of quilted flannel and gingham sat under paper price tags, holding a version of your mother that no store makes room for now.
Dad's mandatory stop at the hardware aisle. Dad never bought anything in that aisle. He picked up a hammer, weighed it in his hand, put it back. He read the backs of wood screws like instructions mattered to a man who wasn't building anything that day. Nobody ever asked why he needed 20 minutes near the drill bits he had no plans to use. It wasn't about the hardware. It was the one corner of the store where nobody needed him for anything, where he could just stand there, being a man with a hammer in his hand, instead of a father being paged over an intercom.
The pet department fish tanks every kid drifted toward. The fish tanks lined the back wall in a soft blue glow, and you drifted there every trip like the whole store was tilted downhill toward them. Neon tetras, a beta alone in its own cup, a filter humming behind the glass. You never asked for one. You just needed the 2 minutes of watching something small move through water that wasn't going anywhere either. That wall of light is the first thing people forget when they talk about Kmart, and the first thing they remember once someone else says it out loud.
Getting lost and found by the intercom. You wandered 1 aisle too far and lost sight of your mother's cart, and for 1 long minute the store felt enormous in a way it never had before. Then your name came over the intercom, first and last, echoing above the toy department, like you were briefly famous. You never told her the second time that you weren't really lost. You just wanted to hear your name said like that again. She met you at customer service with her arms crossed, relieved before she was annoyed, and neither of you ever spoke about which one it really was.
The blue light special, when the whole store stopped. The light spun red on the pole, and a voice called an aisle number. And for 90 seconds, the whole store became one crowd moving toward the same shelf. Your mom grabbed your hand without deciding to. Strangers reached past each other for the same discounted towels, and nobody minded. Here's something most people never knew. That light was invented in 1965 by a Kmart store manager who borrowed the idea from a police car. For a minute and a half, the whole store moved like one family. School clothes shopping. Every August, your mother walked you through the same racks with the same tired determination, holding shirts up to your shoulders without asking, deciding your fifth-grade wardrobe by sight alone. You wanted the shirt with the stripe. She wanted the one that would last through Christmas. There was always a negotiation at the register. Always one item you won and one you didn't. It felt like punishment at the time, standing under those fluorescent lights while she checked hems for length. Now it reads like devotion, and there's no version of it left to walk back into. The in-store lunch counter. The lunch counter sat near the front, red vinyl stools bolted to the floor, and it was the one place your whole family sat down together in the middle of a trip that otherwise pulled you all apart. Grilled cheese, a hot dog, a Coke in a paper cup sweating onto the counter. Your dad let you spin once on the stool before telling you to stop. Nobody talked about anything important there. That was the point. It was 15 minutes where the only job anyone had was sitting together, and there's no counter left standing to prove it happened. The toy aisle before Christmas. Every December, the toy aisle turned into its own country, and you walked it slower than any other aisle in the store, cataloging everything you'd asked for and everything you already knew you wouldn't get. Your mother trailed a few steps behind, not stopping you, just watching what your hand reached for first. You never caught her doing it. She never mentioned it later, not until years afterwards, when she could still tell you exactly what you'd picked up and put back down that year without being asked to buy it. Tell me the town your Kmart was in, and if you remember it, the year the doors closed for good. If this brought back a memory you'd forgotten you had, a like helps more people find it, and there's more of this every week. The layaway counter. Your mother would set something aside at that counter and pay a little off each week, a coat or a bike wrapped in paper and tucked into a back room you never saw. She never told you what she was paying toward. You just noticed she came home from that trip a little quieter, a little proud of something she wouldn't explain yet. On Christmas morning, you understood. That back room held more sacrifice per square foot than anywhere else in the building, and no counter ever replaced what it quietly did for families who couldn't pay all at once. The checkout line's final, "Can I get this?" moment. There was always one last item held up at the register, one final question while your mother's wallet was already open. Sometimes the answer was yes, and you carried it out like a trophy. Sometimes it was no, and you set it back on the candy rack without being told twice. Either way, the checkout line was where every trip ended the same way. A decision, a receipt, a bag handed over the counter. That small negotiation doesn't happen the same way now because nothing waits at a register long enough to matter. The red Kmart bag. The bag was red with white letters, thin plastic that stretched at the handles under anything heavier than a shirt, and you'd carry it out to the car like it meant something more than what was inside it. Your dad would toss it in the trunk without a second look. You'd hold yours on your lap the whole ride home. That bag showed up in every closet, every junk drawer, every glove box in America at some point. And then one year, it just stopped showing up anywhere at all. The last day your local Kmart was open. The last day nobody in your family knew it was the last day. The shelves were half empty, the fixtures already stripped bare in the back corners, and a few employees moved through the aisles like they were saying goodbye to a building instead of a job. By the time it closed for good, fewer than a handful of Kmart stores were left standing in the entire country, down from thousands. Your family walked out that final afternoon the same way you'd walked out 100 times before, with no idea it was the last time you'd ever do it. The moment you realized your kids would never have this. Somewhere in your 30s or 40s, you understood it all at once. Those Kmart trips weren't really about hardware or fabric or a hot dog at a lunch counter. They were the hours your own parents carved out to be a family in public, in a building big enough to hold you apart and still bring you back together.
Your children will never stand under fluorescent lights listening for their name on an intercom. They'll never know what it felt like to lose their mother in an aisle and find her again. That togetherness closed with the store, unannounced. This was never really about a store closing. It was a kind of family time that doesn't exist anywhere now, gone the same quiet way it always was. Tell me what your family bought there last, or which one of them would miss it most. Subscribe, there's more of this every week.